Welcome to the webinar, Ditch the Reading Log, Smarter Summer Routines for Kids with Dyslexia with Dr. Brennan Chandler and Erin Agyeman-Duah. My name's Kim Day, and I'm the president of IDA Georgia. I'm joined this evening by one of our board members, Rhonda Mitchell, and our IDA Georgia coordinator, Anne Marie Lewis. Rhonda, Anne Marie, and I will be hosts this evening to our speakers, and we're so glad that you joined us this evening. Those of you who have already joined may want to put your names and where you're from in the chat box for Brennan and Erin to see. In tonight's webinar, Brennan and Erin will discuss a better way to support summer reading than worksheets, reading logs, and guesswork. This webinar is designed for families who want a smarter approach to summer reading for kids with dyslexia and other word level reading issues. Before we begin, I want to say thank you to those who submitted questions when you registered for the webinar. As a reminder, if you have other questions, please put them in the chat box. The chat box will be monitored this evening by Rhonda and me. During the Q&A, our speakers will address as many of your questions as time allows. And now I'll turn it over to Rhonda.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this evening. Dr. Brennan Chandler is an assistant professor of dyslexia in the Department of Learning Sciences at Georgia State University, whose work focuses on helping children with dyslexia and other reading difficulties make meaningful progress through evidence-based support. His research looks at reading, spelling, and writing instruction with a special focus on what it takes to help effective practices work across home and school. A former classroom teacher, he is passionate about giving parents and educators practical tools they can use with confidence. He is currently leading several state, privately, and internally funded projects focused on literacy intervention development and implementation, with an emphasis on bridging research and practice in classrooms and communities. Erin Agyeman-Duah is a doctoral fellow in dyslexia in the Department of Learning Sciences at Georgia State University and a former Georgia educator with experience in both public schools and specialized dyslexia schools. Her work centers on preparing educators to deliver evidence-based literacy instruction and equipping families with practical, supportive strategies they can use at home. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brennan Chandler and Erin Agyeman-Duah.
Thank you so much, IDA Georgia, for having us tonight. We are really excited tonight to talk about different alternatives that are research-based to the reading log that can help support your kids with dyslexia at home here over the summer. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping things. So please keep in touch. We're doing a lot more parent outreach with my research lab and team here at Georgia State University. We have some research projects for parents that we invite parents in. So if you want to ever follow us along on Instagram, or if you want to make sure to ever have a question or anything, all my contact information is on my website at brennanchandler.com. Also, we have a plethora of resources to support summer reading tonight. So we have a shared Google Drive link that will be in the chat, but it's pretty easy. It's tinyurl.com/ditchlog. And in there, you're going to find all these different things. We have a summer literacy playbook that's kind of like a note guide that we have some hyperlinked resources in there, some different worksheets, activity sheets, and phonics and spelling check. We'll talk about all these resources in there, but go ahead and take a look at that either now or after. I'll kind of prompt through when there'll be a resource in there for you to take a look at. But that's really helpful for us to share that with you all, so you kind of have a guide and you kind of can see and refer to things after this webinar tonight. We already had a great introduction, but just again, my name is Brennan. I'm a professor here at Georgia State University, and I'm joined here by my PhD student, Erin, and we're really, really excited to talk to you all tonight. So, little overview here. We're going to talk briefly about why typical summer reading plans like just logging books and, Pizza Hut, sort of coloring pizzas to get pizza at school might miss the mark, especially for kids with dyslexia or any type of learning difficulties. We're going to outline 5 routines that can help kids build reading skills at home. And the idea here is to make these manageable routines. So we're going to talk about how to make these manageable for kids. And then at the end, I'll have some resources to talk through, and also we'll have some questions. So you can definitely put questions in the chat as you go, or at the end, but we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So why do I not like the reading log as somebody who studies dyslexia and reading development? Well, I want kids to definitely read books, right? We want kids to become lifelong readers and read books, but reading logs don't usually equate to engagement or really growth in reading. So there's really no strong research support by simply logging books or reading more books for kids with dyslexia without support. So simply reading might not build the skills that our students, our children with dyslexia or other difficulties have. It's not going to make me help them if we have them just read books if they really are lacking some of those key skills. Also, with the reading log, there's this idea or this assumption that quantity, again, so more books are just going to give us those skills. We're just going to have kids read Magic Tree House all summer, and if they're not proficient readers, they're probably not going to be able to remediate those skills that they need. It's not going to automatically improve their reading ability. And for me, I am obsessed with efficiency at home, at school, at work. I think it's a really big missed opportunity. So I would rather have families, parents, caregivers spend time on research-based strategies that strengthen those skills that kids need to read independently. And we are going to talk about these routines tonight. And these routines, I've had them done by parents, by older siblings, by grandparents, by nannies, by caregivers, by the neighbor down the street. They can really be implemented at home by anybody. So we already alluded to this, but there's this myth of just reading more. So reading practice helps only when kids really know how to read some of those words, have some of those foundational skills. Kids, especially in English, need to be taught how our code works, how our English language works. And in English, we have a sound to print code. So every word that we read can be broken into sounds and represented with letters. And what we want our students to do, our children with dyslexia, is to crack the code. But they have a really hard time automatically cracking the code. They need some explicit and direct instruction in that. For example, once kids understand that the AI vowel team says A, they can then read the word rain, pain. Then they start chunking it with longer words, domain, explain, ordainment. And our goal with our kids is to make this code automatic so that then they can focus on making meaning from the stories they're reading, writing stories, expressing themselves. It becomes really tricky in English. So when we talk to parents, this is one of the things that we talk about is to crack the code is actually pretty tricky for some kids. We have in our language 44 sounds. We have consonant sounds, we have vowel sounds. We have around 44. But to represent all those 40 sounds, there's over 250 letter combinations that represent those sounds. And that's what makes things a little tricky. So we have single letters, we have letters that are called digraphs that are two different letters that make one sound, like CH says, like in my last name. We have 3 letters that make one sound. We have 4 letters that make one sound. This is really tricky. So our goal is our students, our children should be receiving some of this instruction during the school year, is to really support that at home over the summer, especially if they struggle to pick that up at school during the year. And so our shift with our webinar focuses on tonight is to go from just simply logging books without building skills to then having these targeted routines that build decoding, spelling, and fluency skills. And why? We want skill building with our kids more than just the checkbox filling. We want them to become confident readers and not just be burnt out. And we want progress over just the pressure to read more, because it's hard to read more when you're not really good at it, when you don't feel confident in that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Erin here, and she's going to talk about, when I say literacy skills or reading skills, what are these skills?
So when we think of literacy skills, we can think of the framework of building a house, right? So we want a strong foundation when we are building a house. The same thing applies to building literacy skills. We want a strong foundation in our sound skill level. And those include building strong associations with phonemic awareness and handwriting skill as well. Beyond that, just like building a house, once we start to develop the structure, that Dr. Chandler talked about and understanding the code. We want to apply those to word building skills. And this is when we start focusing on decoding and reading and spelling and writing. And so we start to really build those word level skills. And then our ultimate goal in literacy skill development is building text level skills where students are building skills to produce fluent reading and comprehension, understanding their text, and then beyond that, expressing themselves through writing.
Yeah, thanks. When we talk to parents a lot, and when I have parents come to me and ask me, "Oh, my kid is really struggling to read. They're struggling to read," right? We're thinking about this outcome, this top level of our structure right here, which is our text skills. That's what we expect or we can see. They're reading. They can't read this. They can't read what we're giving them, right? But underneath this, like Erin outlined, there's so many skills underneath reading a book, right? Kids have to be able to read the words that are in the text. They have to also to write. They have to be able to spell words, and below that, to even be able to read words, they have to understand how our language works, and to spell, to get at even writing, they have to have good handwriting skills. All of these things are important. We want to lay the foundation, but we also want to keep building all of these floors at once and not just live in the basement. So our routines tonight are connecting sound skills that our kids really need, word skills, and also text skills all together. So it's going to attack all of these things that make up skilled reading and writing. And a question often, many parents I talk to have to choose between, okay, I need to make sure my child is getting tutoring or what we call intervention, right? Or on the other hand is I want to make sure my child has this love of reading, right? And this is kind of a false dichotomy. Children with dyslexia need both. So we want to make sure we're building their reading skills, their text level skills, their word level skills, their sound level skills, so that reading becomes easier for them. But we also want to make sure that we're building the reader at the same time, through reading aloud at home, through conversations about text, through shared stories. That helps reading become meaningful then. And when these work together, then we have confident readers. We can't just focus so much on tutoring and remediation, and we're going to be doing all of our skill building this summer or in tutoring during the school year. We also want to make sure we're building a love or an enjoyment in our language around reading as well. So tonight we're talking about mainly over here building reading skills, but Erin at the end is going to talk about a way that we can make sure that we're building reading skills at the same time that we're building the reader, that we're building this sort of idea of what reading is. It can be really, really, really meaningful. This might look overwhelming right now. This is an outline of the 5 summer smarter routines that we're talking about. And I like working out. I like efficiency. I like boot camps. This is sort of like a summer boot camp. That's why you have it's all workout themed. All right. So we're going to talk about 5 routines tonight that get at all of those skills that we talked about: sound skills, word skills, and text skills. I'm going to outline all of these, but just know again, you have your summer playbook in the Google Drive where this table will be into. But you'll see here that the time spent on these, they're quick routines. I love going, there's Orange Theory, there's Berry Bootcamp, right? In those workout classes, they're 45 minutes long and we're constantly cycling through the same routines each class. Very much similar to this, right? You can think of it like that. It's efficient, we're getting in, we're getting out, and we're kind of getting on with our day. So all of these don't have to be done at one time. They can be, I call it a routine stack. They could be stacked together. You can choose different days to do these, but all of these are going to help with that, all of those literacy skills that we just talked about. And so we're going to start here at the basement with the sound skills before we get into the word and text level skills. So I'm going to go through each routine. I'm going to talk about what it is, what are the steps, and then what it might look. How could you adapt this? How could you make this fun for your kid at home, or where could this be done? The first routine is we call sound power practice. These are quick daily sound games, and I love doing these with my 6-year-old niece in the car. They could be done in the car. You don't have to be anywhere for this. You could be waiting in line at the zoo. You could be at the grocery store. This is where we're going to focus on what we call phonemic awareness skills, really important for kids with dyslexia. That simply means manipulating units of sound, our language. So we're going to focus on blending sounds together, which is really important to read words, and stretching or segmenting or taking sounds apart, which is really important for spelling words. And so these are the steps here. We're going to pick some quick sound tasks to do, maybe 5 to 7. We're going to orally model an example or two, and then we're going to provide some practice opportunities for our kids. We're going to show them what to do, and then we're going to practice with them. So our sound task, this sound power practice, we're going to focus again on combining sounds together. That's blending. And then taking sounds apart. That's segmenting. So blending is simply this. Great. We're going to blend it together. Great. Right? That's blending. On the other hand, segmenting is the opposite. It's taking them apart. To spell great, kids have to take these sounds apart. Great. So those are our two tasks we really want to make sure that we focus on. Blending sounds together and taking them apart. And when we think about our kids with dyslexia or reading difficulties, we want to start when they're younger, a couple sounds at a time, and then kind of work our way up. Then we could also get to syllables where we're thinking about segmenting or blending larger word parts together. So I'm going to pick a few sound tasks. I might focus on blending, making blending sounds together, because I really know that's important for reading, word reading. But if I notice my kids struggle with spelling at home, then I'm going to probably focus a little more on that segmenting, the taking sounds apart, which is harder than blending. So what does this look like at home? What could this look like in the car? So we're going to model an example or two to start, right? As your kids do this, like my niece, I don't have to model it for her. I'm just saying, all right, we're going to play the sound game. But this is how I would show a direct example at home to my child. I might say something like this. Listen, we're going to play the say a word game. I'll say the word slowly, then I'll say the word fast. Listen, if, that's all. So I'm going to model it. This is called continuous blending if it's easier. Or I might do, listen, I'm going to say the sound. I'm going to say the sound, then I'm going to say them fast together. If, right? That's a little trickier, but you can kind of play around with it. On the opposite, I might have them do the segmenting part, which is, again, where that's the opposite. So I'm going to say the word fast, and then you say it slow. So I might say, if, say it really slow. If, or what are the sounds? If, that's the opposite. So after I maybe model an example or two, this could be at home or it could be in the car, we're going to give them some practice opportunities or some reps, like we'll call it in our workout. So you might want to do it together a few times. Now I'll say the word slowly, then we will say it fast. Listen, sat. What word? Sat. Yes. All right. And then I'm going to give them some reps on the run. If you have other kids in the car, other kids at home, this is a fun thing to do. Your turn. Listen. Mat. What word? Mat. Listen. At. What word? Rat. And so on. So have them try it a few times. Again, we don't need to spend a ton of time here, but it kind of gets them warmed up a little bit. Some adaptations or tips. You can use letters. You could use little alphabet tiles that you have, or we're going to talk about some flashcards that are really affordable to purchase that have letter sound correspondences on them. But you can use letters. You can use coins or tokens. They can move letter tiles for one sound at a time. Also to adapt, if it's pretty easy for them, maybe you mix up the difficulty a little bit, or maybe you don't have to do this one at all. You could also add some movement. So for the summer, kind of like a hopscotch sort of thing, or you're outside and you put maybe some letters or some sound boxes and then get jump, clap, or step for each one. Again, pretty low lift here. The idea here is that they're hearing these sounds that we have in speech, and they're practicing blending them together and then also taking them apart. Those are the key prerequisite skills for then reading words and spelling words. So the next routine, and this is what I think, I almost took this one out this summer because I was like, we need to make sure that our kids are getting handwriting practice. It is so important, even if they have Chromebooks at school, even if they're fifth graders, that we're giving them opportunities to practice their handwriting. Why? It's really important for written expression, meaning for writing skills. Even if we have technology around, when we handwrite something, we know that we're going to remember that information more. And also it does help solidify, in a way, links between sounds and letters in early literacy. So this routine, it's a short focused routine to build handwriting fluency. Really also important for kids with dyslexia who often have co-occurring dysgraphia or writing disabilities, right? We want to make sure that we're practicing letter formation. And these are quick reps, again, to boost automaticity. And we can add in sounds here as well to help them with their sound skills too. So routine steps, and we do have I have some workbook ideas too, and things are linked as well in the playbook. You're going to pick a handful of letters to focus on. You're going to show the letter formation. You're going to show it to them, model it with them with verbal cues, really important here, verbal path. And then you're going to provide, again, some practice reps, right? We need to really make sure we're giving them lots of reps here. So when I think about when I'm working with a child and at home, I'm thinking of, okay, I'm going to pick some letters to focus on. What I like to do when I would do a lot more tutoring, I would sit down with the child and I would just have them write out their ABCs, their capital and lowercase. And then I would go through and see, okay, what letters are they really struggling with, either automatically, or what are some of those letters that are not very legible? And then I might highlight those. Oh, those would be the ones that we're going to really practice this summer. I tutored a second grader last summer who was at risk for dyslexia. I had her do that. I had her write out all the letters, uppercase, lowercase, and then we highlighted them together, the ones that she was struggling with. And those were our key focus for the summer. That was our handwriting hustle, only focused on those. And so think about what they're struggling with. Also, it's really helpful, and occupational therapists say, to group these similar shaped letters together, especially if they have dysgraphia or if you have a kindergarten first grader. So example like A, E, and O, they all have the more circular. ILT would be maybe a grouping together. And then we want to get some materials ready. Handwriting Without Tears, I'll plug because they're really low cost workbooks. I have them linked in the literacy playbook that we call it, that's overview, but they're really, really low cost, about $15 workbooks by grade level 2. It has everything there for you. It outlines what you should do each day, and it's just a workbook they can do every single day. But let's say you don't want to do that. I also have CASL, C-A-S-L, is another PDF resource in there from Steve Graham and colleagues. That's a free handwriting program for first graders. Really could be used kindergarten, first, second grade. That's also in the Google Drive as a whole PDF. But after I pick a few letters I'm going to focus on, maybe the ones they're really struggling with, or we're just going to group some similar letters together that we want them to practice. We're going to model or show how to make that letter with verbal cues. We want to say the specific movement cues aloud while writing. I also have this as a PDF, is the Handwriting Without Tears verbal cues. So an example here for H, I would say, all right, I'd have maybe a whiteboard out, or I'd have a piece of paper if I'm at the kitchen table next to my child, and I'll say, okay, letter H, this is how we make it. We start at the top, we dive down, we swim up and over, back down. Say it with me, I'm gonna do it again. We dive down, we swim up and over, and we go back down. All right, I'm gonna show you one more time. Dive down, swim up and over, and go down. That verbal path for our dysgraphic students becomes really important, so they can start internalizing those as they're practicing and writing those letters. But all of those, again, there's a PDF of there for Handwriting Without Tears. I like their verbal cues, they're fun. For like to make the letter E, they have, all right, we're gonna start at the midline, we're gonna hit the ball, we're gonna run the bases back down. So they're catchy, and they also help, again, solidify some of those pathways when they're then going to write those letters. We wanna make sure that those letters are fluent, so then when they get to write and spell, they're not worried about the handwriting or the actual motor act of that, but they're focused on linking the letters and the sounds together to crack the code. And then again, we want to provide a few practice reps. So I'm not just going to show my child what to do. I'm going to have them do that with me, and they're going to do it alone as well. That's really, really important there. So practice a few together. They could have handwriting paper. Again, I'll give Handwriting Without Tears another plug because the occupational therapist I had a great occupational therapist when I taught at a dyslexia school, and he swore by it. And that's all we used in school was Handwriting Without Tears paper, because they don't have the line in the middle. It's best to make it small and have those just 2 lines and not that dotted middle line, actually. And I really love the program. But practice them together with them, and then have them try it on their own while saying the sound the letter makes, or those verbal cues. If I have this child who's really struggling with the motor act of writing, I'm going to have them, as they're making their letters on their own, say the cues out loud. Dive down, swim up and over, back down. Dive down, swim up and over, back down. And then what I like to do when they did all their practice reps, we're going to go back and we're going to circle or highlight the best ones, right? We can make it a fun thing, get a highlighter. What ones were the best that you did here? What are the best ones that you think you did? Oh, is this one your best work? Probably not. Let's cross this off and try again. But again, handwriting, low lift, I think, especially if you have either print out those free CASL materials from Steve Graham, or you print out, or you get the Handwriting Without Tears book. That's like, I have my niece do it every summer. It's like $15 and we work through some of it together. But really easy way to build in a routine with that. So that we worked at those sound or those subword skills, right? Those basement skills. We're not just going to stay there. Even if our child really struggles with reading and spelling, we're going to be building, right, laying the foundation. But just like a house, we're making sure that we're building the whole thing together sort of at the same time, right? We're putting the drywall up, we're putting the framing up as we build those basements because we want these all to work together. So now we need to work on their word level skills, which is really the hallmark characteristic of kids with dyslexia, right? They really, really struggle with word reading and word spelling, so reading and then spelling words. And so we're going to talk about two routines that are basically one, but I kind of, again, because I think kids need a lot of practice at home with handwriting and with spelling that they might not be getting so much at school, and then especially not in the summer. We're going to focus on that. So this is word workout. And so this is a brief routine, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. We're not spending a ton of time on each of these, right? We're not belaboring all of these. This gives kids fast, focused practice with important phonics patterns. You probably have heard the word phonics at your child's school or at home, but if you're not super familiar on what phonics is, right, we know it should be happening. That's where we're teaching kids the systematic relationship between the letters and the sounds that represent them, right? That is what we're doing. That's phonics is helping kids crack the code. And our kids need help making sure that they're cracking the code at school, and then also that support over the summer so those skills don't slide. So in this routine, we're just going to have kids read and spell some words. It's really simple, I promise, that share common spelling patterns that we might think they're struggling with. All right. It might be single letters they're struggling with, maybe some vowel teams. Those are two vowels together that make the same sound, that they vary in our language, or maybe some things like suffixes, those endings, ing, ed. And I'm going to focus here for a second on why this matters so much is that when we give kids daily phonics reps, then they can get to faster, stronger word reading, which is the goal, to get to then being able to understand and make meaning of text. Helps lock in these print to sound connections for lasting literacy growth. We don't want our kids to guess when they come across a word. We're going to make sure that they're getting supported with these systematic relationships between letters and sounds so they can sound out words and really crack the code. But when we think about this, Erin and I on our research team, we ran a research study with parents this summer on helping parents support their kids with spelling at home. And we really thought about this. And I think about this a lot for parents. Where do we start with the child at home, right? Where do I start with my kid? With these what's a phonics pattern? What am I doing here? So during the school year, if you're still in school, a lot of folks are depending on where you are in the country, first is connecting with your child's teacher and seeing. You might ask, if your child's in kindergarten, first or second grade, what phonics patterns are they focusing on at school? What are they working on at school? Or because you might be on summer vacation already, or maybe you want to see for yourself at home. In the Google Drive, we have a quick phonics check. And it really lays out what you might want to do with your child. You basically like a mini test or quiz just to see what letter sound knowledge do they have. And so that check that we've had parents do, have had parents do for a couple summers now. You're just going to read those directions there, and you're just going to go through, and your child's going to read some words with different phonics patterns, ranging from more simple to more complex. And then when you see some gaps there, and there's guides on there as well, like what's a gap? Maybe they're missing a couple of these words, or they don't really know how to spell these types of words, right? That's what you'll focus your word workout on those gaps and those trickier patterns that you see in that phonics check with your child. So you might print that off. You might go through it step by step. You might do it over a couple days. Hey, you bring your child over here. I want you to read these words to me, or I want you to tell me what these letters are. And once you see there's some errors, that's where we might focus some of our time this summer. We might focus some of our time on just single letter sound correspondences. And we'll talk about some guides I have in there to help too, that we've helped parents with here in a second. So for the word workout, we're going to pick a phonics focus, maybe a 1 or 2 concepts or letter sound correspondences at a time. And again, I'm going to skip ahead for a second here. We do have this sound to spelling guide that's in the Google Drive. So you can see in English, okay, these are the 44 sounds. These are the possible spellings that we want to make sure that they can spell and also read in words. So for example, we have the sound here, right? As in king. There are 4 different ways we could actually spell that in our English language. And this guide we made for parents to kind of see, oh, okay, these are some of these letter sound correspondences that we might want to focus on. Many adults don't know, and we have, and Erin's taught undergraduates in this course, or undergrad students this year. When I teach my graduate students, most of them, we don't realize, because we're good proficient readers, that, oh my gosh, there's 2 different ways to spell that sound. So this guide there should help also kind of demystify some of that stuff for you as well. So you're going to pick a phonics focus, 1 or 2 sound spellings from that guide at a time, seeing where their gaps are, and that brief little phonics check you might do with them. We're going to introduce the concept directly. We're going to sound out and read words with that focus then, and then we're going to spell words. And there's ways to adapt this to make this a little more engaging and fun, I promise. But this is sort of the meat of it. I call this, when I train teachers, these are the active ingredients of this. This is what we really want to make sure that we focus on. So again, you're going to pick a phonics focus, connecting with school learning and seeing what are the phonics skills on my child's end of year assessment or phonics check that they struggle with still. We might focus on these at home. Or you're going to complete that phonics check that's in the Google Drive that has the directions there. Then I'm going to pick those focus. Maybe my child's struggling with the AI spelling, like in the word rain or brain, right? That is something that I saw on their knowledge gap or from their teacher. That's a valid team that they're struggling on, or a sound spelling. I'm going to make sure that I clearly teach that and provide a brief explanation. So what does that mean? All it is we're directly and explicitly telling them, here are the letters AI. And when you see AI in a word, you're going to say A. What sound? A. Yes, it sounds A, like in the word rain. All right. And there are another resource. They're $15. Everything's about $15 that I always recommend to parents, a sound deck that kind of will show you the different sounds from our sound spelling guide, and then are the different letters and the sounds on the back. It kind of like flashcards almost that you can use that kind of help you too. And so you might introduce this, and that's it. We're just going to show them, here are 2 letters right here that make 1 sound. And it says A in most English words, A. And that's all. And so you introduce it directly, and the magic isn't in introducing it. It's important that we explain to kids, okay, what is the sound spelling? But the magic with our kids, especially with dyslexia, they need so many more reps or practice opportunities than kids without reading difficulties. They need a lot more practice. And that's really what it comes down to. I see a lot of brain balance, dyslexia, all these programs on Facebook and online. It really comes down to practice and then providing feedback when they make a mistake and having them correct their errors. So we want to make sure they're sounding out and reading words with the phonics focus. And again, you could do this. You could either print off some words and type them up. That seems like a lot of work though sometimes, or you can have a whiteboard and just write some words out. I always say we could teach literacy just with a napkin, a piece of paper, a golf pencil at a restaurant, a crayon, whatever it is. That's all you need. Having a list of words that contain a mix of different things that they're working on, but really here it's sort of all of those AI words we're going to have them practice here. So when I have a child that might be a kindergartner or first grader who really is struggling, I'm going to make sure we sound these out together. So I might say, let's sound out a few words together with our new spelling. We're going to sound it out. We're going to sound out the word correctly and then read it fast or say it fast together. And I might say, get ready, say it fast, rain. All right, your turn. Let's practice sounding it out together. Say it fast, rail. Some kids don't need that step. They can just practice sounding out and blending on their own. But you might want to sound it out. And I always like to, because there's a really great program, direct instruction program that had that cue of say it the fast way. We want to make sure they're saying them the fast way. They're not just stuck on sounding it out. It's good that they sound it out. ain, but we want to make sure they say it fast because we want them to read them automatically. So having them sound out these words with you and on their own too is really important. You can mix in different things you've been teaching them maybe. We'll provide a resource at the end if you don't want to maybe make all this up on your own. But really now, and I'll talk a little bit about how Gen AI has been so helpful with supporting parents with literacy at home, because there's a lot of great tools that can kind of make stuff for you based on your kids' needs. And then you can just kind of batch them in practice over the summer. So after you sound out and read some of those words with that phonics focus, right? It's really, really important that, as I keep saying, especially for kids with dyslexia or difficulties, that they get lots of chances spelling words. Spelling instruction in schools is not as common or is prioritized as reading or word reading instruction or phonics instruction. And usually in kids with dyslexia, there's a developmental lag between their reading skills, right, and their spelling skills. They can read a lot, like most adults. We can all read a lot more words than we can actually spell precisely, but there's this gap here. So while they might be able to read rain and rail and sail, they might not be able to spell those. So it's really important that we have them practice spelling too. And I'll bring this into focus again, that we created this when we did our parent study that I've used with parents now too, this sound to spelling guide. It's going to help you see, okay, the sounds and then the possible spellings, right? And it helps kind of explain, kind of teaches us a little bit about what we're looking for, what we want to make sure we're supporting with our kids. But what good spelling programs do, and what we've had parents do, is it really comes down to working through saying a word connected to phonics patterns and struggles that they have, saying it, and then using this routine, stretching it out and having them spell the sounds. So I might say 5, 6, or 7 words, practice words, and they're going to practice spelling those words, right, based on the things I know that they're struggling with. So for example, if they're struggling to spell like the A sound, you might say something like this. All right, we're going to spell some words on your paper right now. The first word I want you to spell is pain. What word? Make sure they say it back to you. Pain. Yeah, don't show them the word. You're just having them retrieve it. And then we'll say, let's stretch the word together. Ready? A. What's the first sound? Write what spells. What's the next sound? A. Write what spells A in the word pain. Next sound? Write what spells right? You can do it like that. You might just say, spell the word pain, and then they spell it, right, if they need less support. But some kids really need you to help them break it down. And you're going to stretch each sound, spell each sound, stretch each sound, spell each sound, and then do a few more words. But for most of our kids, they might make errors, which is part of learning and is going to happen. So when maybe they misspell a word or a part of a word, we're going to make sure we provide them right away with the correct spelling. And when we did and Ann and I and our team did our parent study on spelling this fall, that's what we noticed a lot of families struggled with, was providing what we call in education immediate error correction. It can be sometimes hard for us as parents, as with our child, to immediately correct their errors when they make a mistake, right? But really in spelling, we want to make sure that those errors aren't ingrained. And so right if they made a mistake, if my child spelled pain, P-A-N, I'm going to say, oh, not quite. Here's how you spell pain. I'm going to write it out myself. I'm going to show them pain. AI is in pain. What's spelling here? AI. I want you to cross off yours and make your spelling match my spelling in pain. And then they're going to cross it off and then spell the sound there. So that is important that we do that. We found when we were coaching parents that, again, that little practice, what we call immediate error correction or immediate feedback, really helped boost the spelling. In the spelling study we did, I get excited about it because it was so great. Most of the participants or our kids in the study made more than 1 year of spelling growth in 10 weeks, which is kind of a lot because of this sort of routine and this really explicit sort of training of letter sound correspondences. So that's word workout. And again, the word workout is We do word workout and the spelling sprint part. Again, I make them fun workout names to make it a little engaging here. But there too, it's basically you're going to practice reading some words with the phonics patterns and spelling some words. It could be the same phonics patterns, or it could be ones that you really know that they're struggling with. But how do we adapt this? How might we make this a little more engaging, or what are some other things that we could do? Well, we recommend maybe reviewing with what we call a phonics stack. So we've linked one that I use with when I train teachers, my graduate students, when we work with other teachers and parents as well. It's a $15 phonics stack. They're basically flashcards of all the sound spellings. And maybe we just do a flashcard review of the sounds before we even get into the skills, right? That maybe ones that they've known that we've taught them. And then we make sure that we review those too. Also, I love doing timer challenges. So maybe we time them reading the word list once, and then we see, okay, can you beat your time the second time? And then maybe you get a sticker or something. Again, any way to gamify it is fun. And again, mixing in review patterns, maybe mixing in things they know super well to make it a little more confident, and also things they might not know as well as it too. So this brings us to our last routine, which is all about text level skills. So again, we're supporting all of these things, sound skills, word skills, and the goal we want to make sure that our kids can do is read and write, right? And this helps with their text level reading. And this one we call Fluency Dash. And Fluency Dash, this one is an oral reading routine. So they're going to read out loud. This helps build reading fluency, which is their accuracy, they're accurately reading words, and their speed, their automaticity. We know that helps get them to then understanding text. We want to make sure we're building the house all together and they're reading what we call connected text, not just word lists. It's important that they practice isolated words and also spelling those words. We want to make sure that we practice it all together. We kind of put it all together here. They're going to read a passage a few times, more than once, right? We're going to read a couple times, and then we're going to ask a couple questions at the end to make sure that they're making meaning from their text. They're not just reading super fast. And so this could be pretty simple. It's going to be pretty light and fast. It's 3 different steps. You're going to pick a little passage or a little excerpt, maybe some sentences. You're going to have your child read that passage a few times. We call it repeated readings. And there's a couple ways we're going to show that you can do it, because we know that helps build what we call this reading fluency. And then a quick comprehension check at the end. But where would I get these passages from? So for younger students, it really is, we want to make sure when they're practicing some of their fluency that we might want to keep it focused on taught phonics patterns. So if I'm working with my child on AI spellings, and I know that's kind of where they're at, and I'm going to make sure that there's some of those AI vowel spellings in there, or AY or EE or what have you. So we're going to keep it focused on some of those. And what I love now is there's some really great generative AI tools and technology that can be your friend. And there are so many of them out there. I'm going to show you one, though, that I'm partial to, because the founder of this is a really, really great guy. He's done a lot of great work and works with the University of Florida to build some of this out too. It's called Project Read AI, and you can try it for free. I think you can actually you can use it for free mostly if you're not, creating 10 different passages a day. But what I really like about it is that you can click, there's different scope and sequences, what schools call, like for University of Florida or UFly, the phonics program, right, that some schools adopt. But you can kind of pick what spellings you maybe want to focus on for a story for your child to read. And that's what I really like about this, is that it helps create what we call decodable text, or controlled phonics text. And it does so in a really, really great way. That you could try using ChatGPT or Gemini, which we have prompts and I've tried before, but this one makes it really, really great. And it's a really, really great program that I often recommend for teachers and parents. So let's say this was what they created, right? This story, right? So I'm going to print it off maybe. We know that we probably do want our kids reading print, is to print when they're practicing their phonics and their reading skills. So we're printing it out here. And then we're going to do what we call repeated readings. We're going to read that passage a couple times to build the muscle of fluency. So the first one I might do is I do an echo read. That means I'm going to read a sentence out loud. exactly how a good reader reads it, my child's going to read it back to me. But they're tracking the text as I'm reading it, and then they're going back and tracking. So I'll read a sentence, you read a sentence. I'm going to model what fluent good reading sounds like. Then we might do a choral read, or we're going to read it all together for our second time. And then for our last read, we might do an independent read where they're going to read it alone or whisper read it out loud. And you're going to provide some feedback if they're making errors maybe after. We're going to tell them the words that they missed or said incorrectly, right? I like doing at least 2 of these reads at home over the summer. So usually what works well when it's one-to-one, or you have maybe a sibling wants to do this or a grandparent, right? I say it, they say it. The echo reading, and then doing more of the independent after. And then after, do a couple comprehension questions, just basically checking out who was asking them to make sure that they can recall what was happening so they're making meaning from the text. So you could say literal questions like, who is the story about, or what happened first? And then maybe some inferential or questions where they have to think beyond the text, like why questions, why did the boy run away, or why was it important? And so some adaptations for this, if they're really struggling with this, well, we can use less words, we can start with sentences, or maybe we provide some more support. We model word by word sounding it out and decoding, maybe for younger students. If it's too easy, make the passages longer. Create connected passages over the week or month. Maybe your child's really interested in something sports related or something interesting. The child I was tutoring last summer was really interested in K-pop Demon Hunters, I believe the name of the show was. And so we made all the passages related to that, right, through a Gemini type of thing. But what really is cool, especially if you have reluctant readers, which many of our children are reluctant readers because they don't have the skills necessary to maybe read confidently, is to have them track their reading. So instead of a log, what we can do is we can track how many words maybe in a minute that they're reading correctly, right? So they can do a first read, they can track how many words per minute they read and we time them. Then a second read, we want to make sure they keep their accuracy and then they increase their speed, and maybe some notes or celebrations, right? And then we can get into talking a little bit about setting goals and, what's your goal for tomorrow? Maybe it's 41 correct words, or maybe it's 42. Whatever makes sense here. But this fluency dash tracker, also in the Google Drive, can be a great way to kind of keep things going and being motivated. So those are all the main routine. Darren's going to talk about one consideration that we have beyond these are our skill building workout routines. But again, this is the game plan here. You don't have to do all of these, right? Think about what they need most. Maybe we don't need to do the sound power practice. Maybe we want to focus on a couple of these, all of these Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But whatever it is, just thinking about building a system and sticking to that system over the summer. Maybe it's before bed a couple times a week, or maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. I've had parents do all different types of things, but whatever it is, making a system and sticking to it. And also making it fun and reinforcing it, right? We have some reinforcement ideas. I have kind of a sticker chart I'll show you. It's in the Google Drive. But kids learn best when the practice feels doable and rewarding. We want to reinforce, meaning we want to give them positive feedback, right? But we want to give them maybe other reinforcers too, maybe tangible reinforcers, prizes, right? That's not bad. We want to make sure that we stick to our workout plan, right? Sometimes when I'm at the gym, right, and if I met a goal, maybe like a lifting goal or something, we'll go have a nice, fun steak dinner somewhere or something. Who knows, right? But it's okay to have external reinforcers. And ditching that old reading log might make this practice feel like we're building then some of these more small wins. And so here's what the tracker looks like. And I've had different parents and families do this different ways, right? You could color in 1 star for each day of your reading workout. And then, okay, you can plan at the beginning of the summer. If you get 5 workouts in, what's a good reward for that you might have? Okay, if you get 10 workouts in, what the reward is. And I like doing this at the beginning of the summer, maybe putting this on the fridge so they have something to work toward. So it's manageable again. It feels like they're getting somewhere, and they can, again, also be reinforced. Some kids need a small little prize every day. It really just depends on your child, right? But back to this, we want to make sure we're building strong readers. That, again, we're building reading skills, text, words, sound. but also we want to make sure that we're building the reader. The reading skills we talked about really through our workout routine here. But Erin's going to talk about a couple things to build the reader, making sure that we're keeping or building a love of reading as well, even though our child might be struggling with these skills.
So one of the things that we think about when we are talking and thinking about building reading relationships are different opportunities to engage our children with reading. And one idea could be creating a family book club. Again, the goal here is, just to build the opportunity for families, parents and children, the adults and the child, to read together and enjoy that process of reading. And not highly structured, but there are some things that we want to kind of hit on as we are engaging in family book club, where we can talk about choosing a book, right? And so this gives us a chance to really understand what the child is interested in and what areas of reading they may want to read. And we can help them select books from there. We also want to think about parents or the adult reading aloud to the child, so that, as Dr. Chandler mentioned, the child can hear that fluent reading. And in this case, when we are reading books in our family book club, we are able to read higher level text. So text that could present higher level vocabulary, potentially more challenging word language structures within the text. This helps expand that child's language, and it truly makes the opportunity to read together so enjoyable. Additionally, we can talk about different ways to engage with the books together. So, Dr. Chandler, we can go to the next slide. We can talk about easy conversation starters that we can have as we read the books with our children here. For example, what do you think will happen next? In academic areas and academic settings, we talk about making predictions. That's the same thing we're doing here. And again, these are routines and opportunities just that we can, take to share an enjoyable moment and hearing what the child really thinks about the text. We can also talk about story elements. What is surprising to you here? And what do you like most about this story? What do you think will happen next? Why do you think that will happen? And so these are what we call conversation starters that allow us to kind of take turns with conversing with the child about what it is that we're reading. And this helps to kind of build that high level engagement that we're looking for as we move students from building those text level skills into helping to shape their relationship with reading. Dr. Chandler?
Yeah, thanks so much, Erin. Yeah, it's something that I was reflecting on that I did with my dad actually growing up was every summer we would choose a new Chronicles of Narnia book to read sort of together. And that was kind of a fun shared ritual that really helped. I did enjoy reading growing up, but again, kind of a fun ritual to do to read the book together, I remember asking me these questions. Wasn't that surprising? Or, oh my gosh, why do you think that character did that in this chapter? And then watching the movie after type of thing. So anytime we can read aloud to our children, it to be especially like a longer chapter book, building in that routine, if it's bedtime routine or just Saturday, we're going to go read for an hour on the hammock together and we're going to talk about this book that you're interested in so much, really then again helps develop that. Before we close out and we answer some questions, I do have a few resources that aren't just routines, that are also, they're linked in our workbook here. One of these is a reading program. Let's say I don't want to develop reading routines from scratch. I want to do this as a parent, or maybe I want to have my older sibling do this, or an aunt or uncle. Katie Pace Miles at CUNY Brooklyn, an amazing reading researcher and practitioner, developed a free program called Reading Ready. It's really designed for kids in grades kindergarten, first and second grade, but you can download the materials. They're all there, and the lesson, they'll walk you through it. You don't have to build word lists or go build stories. It really walks you through that. It's a really fantastic resource. Another book I recommend to parents that want to learn a little more about phonics in English and all these sound spellings is Uncovering the Logic of English. Really practical book that kind of walks you through the spellings, the way they are, and kind of helps you maybe explain them to your child as well. Here's an example again of that sound deck that I always buy. I always buy in bulk. The publishers, William Van Cleave Publishing. Again, we link that to along with the Project Read AI decodable text generator as well. But we'll stick around for a few minutes here and answer some questions. Otherwise, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you so much, IDA Georgia. Thank you, Kim, Anne Marie, and Rhonda again for having us. This was so lovely.
Thank you, Brennan and Erin. This was just fantastic. And I love the way you set it up where you talked about building the foundational skills, but then also building the reader and building up the reader. And I have to say, for my own background and working at the Atlanta Speech School, it's all about the conversation around the text. That's so important to help build the language. So thank you for that. We do have a couple of questions. We had some that came in during the session, and I'll try to get to those, Brennan and Erin, and then I also have some, I shared some with you earlier that have a lot to do with motivation and how do you convince or motivate a dyslexic kid to read who just tries to avoid it at all cost. I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about our reluctant readers. So I think about this a lot, right? So with reading and motivation, we might think our kids are really unmotivated to read, right? It's maybe they're either reluctant, they despise it, they hate it, they don't want it, whatever, right? If you were a child or killed them with dyslexia, reading difficulties, right, and their motivation to reading, there's this bi-directional relationship, really meaning that the stronger a reader a kid is, the more motivated they are to read, and vice versa, right? So we try to build just reading motivation, and we can't. But you know what works is building reading skill at the same time, as we kind of talked about with this sort of visual of trying to as much build the reader. Well, when I've worked with adolescents or older readers, though, that is usually hard to do, right? They've had so much negative experiences with persistent reading difficulties that it makes them, maybe there's a correlation between reading and reading anxiety that can be high, right? They might have reading anxiety and be anxious to read, right? They might just, again, despise it because of the negative failure that they've had over and over with it. But with that, some promising area I think of research that we're finding is having conversations with our kids about, okay, I call them like real conversations. Like, let's sit down here for a second. Why does reading matter? Like, starting there, right? Why does literacy matter? What do you want to do when you grow up? Thinking about backwards mapping with especially my older adolescents, why literacy skills matter, right? And maybe they won't love it, which is for some kids with dyslexia, they might not love it. And that's fine. I don't want them to love it at the end of the day. I want them to have the skill that they can go use when they need to use it in life, in workplace, in that functional literacy. Last summer, I tutored an 8th grader who has pretty severe dyslexia, really reading many grades below grade level, right? And we had to have some of these outside reading goal setting conversations about, okay, what is your career goal, or what do you want to do with your life, right? And again, backwards mapping that and being really real, like, we're just going to get you. My goal for her that summer was really more of a functional reading level, right? Because she was many grades below. And we got there, but it took some coaching, some conversations, taking breaks, right? And that's why I like boot camp style stuff, especially with older kids. Like, we're going to spend 10 minutes on this. And then for the next 30 minutes, you can do whatever you want on YouTube. Okay, then we're going to come back 10 more minutes, right? And building that system if you can. But I know it's hard. I know it's easier said than done.
Thanks, Brennan. It is, but I think that trying to also like hook these kids on something they really want to read. And I like the idea of like, where do you want to go? What would you like to do? And backwards planning it.
Yeah.
We have a question from Pat Butler, who is joining us from Ireland. He has a question about audiobooks. He says, I work with some students whose parents do not speak English, so home reading support in English could be limited. I'm wondering whether audiobooks are best viewed mainly as an access tool for vocabulary comprehension and curriculum content, or whether audiobooks can also support reading development when used in a structured way. For instance, is it beneficial for the student to have a physical copy of the book and track the text while listening? Would you recommend that they listen to a short section and then read back a page or a paragraph or selected passage, or is there a different routine that you would suggest for using audiobooks?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it's something I think a lot about right now. I do think on one hand, audiobooks are such a great way to build language comprehension skill, right? Like or building background knowledge, vocabulary, language comprehension. I love audiobooks myself when I'm driving and all these things, right? You can, it really helps, especially if there's sort of a delay there, or we're having kids that are learning English, right? That provides really rich opportunities, I think, for language development. What I don't love is when they're replacing the reading instruction or intervention, right? So we want to use them together. I think that's a great idea to use excerpts maybe in support. What I see in the secondary grades sometimes is those accommodations replacing instruction, then like access to audiobooks or speech to
Yeah.
text, right? We want to make sure that they're there to provide, again, access is important, but also the instruction is equally as important as well. But using them, I don't have a great routine suggestion, but I think if you're doing some, I know some middle school teachers that do like novel studies or they're teaching things through novels, right? Having an option for going back and forth, I think makes a lot of sense there, maybe to provide that access for kids with pretty severe reading difficulties.
I appreciate that. The other question, we have this all the time, Brennan, is for students that are multilingual learners. Do you have anything particularly resources maybe in Spanish? And I haven't looked at all the resources you sent us in the Google folder, but do you have uh, any suggestions for parents around?
I really I see a great model of this actually in Canada. They have OnLit has a really great they do French and English, and I haven't found, at least yet in the States, of us having resources that really do both. Maybe Katie Pace Miles will come out with a reading ready, a sort of also Spanish help as well. But really for parents, if you do for parents with English proficiency, I do think if you have students or your child is learning English, all of these things we're talking about tonight really do help them. I would say adding in as much as you can more word meaning and vocabulary, meaningful parts of words like preheat. Like, what does pre mean? Oh, pre means before you do something, right? Anytime we can add in some of that, also cognates as well when things are similar in Spanish. But that's sort of, I don't have a great resource for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do think that Elsa Curtis Hagen has some
Mm.
resources, but I also know I believe she has a curricular program for young children.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
it's I think Wilson has it now. I think it's
Gotcha.
so anyway, but that's there aren't as many resources as we need to have. So thanks again, Erin and Brennan. Really appreciate it. And for all those
Thank
who
you.
joined us this evening, thank you so much. I would like to share some other outreach events that IDA Georgia will be hosting this summer. On Monday, June 29th, we will have a summer conversation with Janet Street, IDA Georgia board member, and the topic will be on adult dyslexia. Guest speakers will be Foster Souls and Felice Catalano. I had the privilege of working with them at the Skank School for a while. And then in August, on Wednesday, we have a part one, part two webinar. The topic is the Dyslexic Students College Roadmap. And this two-evening event is sponsored by IDA Georgia's Teen Board and member Matthew Frank. And what they'd like you to know is if you have a student ready to start applying to college who wants to learn more about how the process differs for students with dyslexia, tune into part one. Or if you have a student who's heading to college soon and wants to hear about navigating college, what navigating college is really like with dyslexia, tune into part two or go to both parts. And then one more plug for our webinar series on Wednesday, September 23rd. So IDA Georgia will host its Spotlight on Structured Literacy webinar number 5. Our speaker will be Josh Clark. Josh is the head of school at the Landmark School in Boston. He is also the former head of school at the Skank School here in Atlanta, and his presentation will be on the intersection of LD and AI, how to support students with dyslexia in the age of AI. And I know some of you had some questions about all the digital everything that's coming at us. And so you'll want to tune in to hear what Josh has to say. Again, we appreciate you attending our webinar this evening. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks again, Brennan and Erin. This was
Thank
wonderful.
you, guys. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
All right, good night.
Bye.